Welcome to Fresh Thinking by Snowden Optiro. My name's Tarrant Elkington, General Manager, Snowden Optiro in Perth. The topic of this podcast relates to the crossover between the resource geologist and the mine planning engineer. And we're doing a couple of podcasts in this area, so please look out for the others. But this one in particular focuses on some of the things that mining engineers should know about resource estimates. And for this discussion, I'm joined by a geologist, Dr. Gregory Zhang, who's a senior consultant with us here at Snowden Optiro. Greg has over 14 years of experience in resource estimation, exploration, and academic areas across a range of different commodities and regions. He's got experience in all the fun stuff like non-linear estimation methodologies as well as linear estimation methods for resource estimation. He develops and presents some of our Snowden Optiro training courses in both English and in Mandarin. So welcome to the podcast, Greg.
Thanks, Tarrant. Glad to be here. Probably you could give us an introduction about the reason why you want to do the podcasts on this topic.
Well, I thought this would be a useful topic for listeners. I mean, in my experience in doing mine planning work for many years, my original experience was that mining engineers tend to take a resource model on face value. Geologist does the resource model, hand it over the top, and the mining engineer picks it up, uses it, pretends like it's actually what's going to happen. And over the years, many years ago, I decided to take a bit more of an interest in this because I think that somebody can't really do a great mine plan unless you understand all the other disciplines that are involved, and in particular the resource that you're getting and that you're trying to optimize. So I sort of looked into resource estimation, and I actually did a lot of reading of the books of Jackie Coombs, who explained it in sort of simple terms in her books, and in discussions with her made it simple for me to understand. And so I never really got to the point where I've learned how to do a resource estimate myself, but understand the key concepts, the implications for mine planners, and how to ask the stupid questions to resource geologists. So for listeners, apologise in advance if any of my explanations or responses are overly simplistic. I'm not a geologist. But I think if we can understand these things, we're in a better position to be able to get better value solutions for our customers and be able to communicate it to them.
I fully agree. And I've read the two books written by Jackie Coombs as well. They're really great books. And so, Tarrant, what are some of the areas you would like to focus on?
So these are my areas. We can expand on them. Yep. But firstly, just understanding the limitations that are associated with the models that we get. Look and try to quickly understand what the estimation methods are. A little bit on some of the topical areas like recoverable resource models and localisation. What do those things actually mean? Okay. And so our focus here is really going to be try to understand these areas and their implications for the mine planner. Okay.
So what do you mean by the limitation of the resource models?
Well, I guess a resource model is just that. It's a model.
Yeah,
so I always love the quote from George Box, who says that all models are wrong, but some are useful. Yeah. So resource models are useful, but we need to understand what's kind of wrong about them.
Exactly.
And really a resource estimate is just an estimate of what's in the ground. It's the best guess based on the data. So we can always use more data, and there's always a lot of uncertainty about what happens. And, I think if I was to make a first recommendation for a mining engineer is to go and get the drill data and just go and have a look at it, and you will understand a bit better yourself about how hard it is to estimate a resource.
Fully agree. And what are the type of the things you would like to learn about by looking at the data?
Yeah, so if you bring the resource data, the drill data in and spin it around on a page rather than just looking at blocks, you'll start to see, the continuity or the challenges in estimating the geological continuity of the deposit,
Yep.
so that you could have a better discussion with the geologist. And I think what the other thing I'd do is grab your pit optimization shells if you've got them, or pit designs, and overlay that with the drilling. I remember one particular case where I sort of first did this because somebody said, "Oh, can you send me the drill holes?" And there was only 12 drill holes, and it's an inferred resource. So I sent them to them, but I loaded them up against the pit shell and found out that only one of them actually existed in the pit shell. The other 11 were outside, right? And so to me, there was, quite a large, deep, 300-meter deep pit based on a single drill hole. And you start to realize that the pit, the detailed staging that we did on the resource were a bit, premature, you might say. So, that's, I think, a really... good thing to do. And secondly, you get to look at the variability that exists at the drill hole scale. So sometimes a model applies a smoothing to a model, and you don't get to see actually when you want to go mine it, what it could possibly look like and how you need to try to manage in grade control and in operations to extract the valuable mineral. So just, Greg, maybe moving on to the next topic around resource estimation methods, definitely not an area of my expertise. I thought it might be good to get you to explain to the audience some of these topics, and then maybe I can chime in with some of the implications for mine planning.
Definitely. So ordinary kriging, for example, it's one of the most commonly used linear estimation methods nowadays. So for this method, it's considering the spatial correlation between the sampling using the variogram models. And so similar to any other estimation methods, ordinary kriging is essentially searching for certain samples and then put this average value into the blocks. So as you mentioned earlier before, this will be, of course, reduce the variability from the samples and make it smoother into the blocks due to the averaging process.
That's great. And so I think from a mine planning perspective, if you get an ordinary Krieged model, I think it's worth understanding that the variability is reduced because we're trying to estimate, based off of that
point samples
going into that. So when I think about particularly for a bulk deposit, that there is some inherent combination of the samples going on, and which kind of mimics the process of mixing or dilution internally. Of course, it doesn't deal with the external dilution around the edges of your domains, but actually can build some of that that dilution process into the model, and something for you to consider when you're doing dilution and ore loss estimates.
Okay, I see. So from our perspective, the resource geologist side, when we do this estimation, we're more thinking from the variance volume relationship, because as you said, we get the point data and then we want to estimate into the larger support or larger volume, and then this we need to honor this relationship. And usually when we get larger support, we get less variability. So in this case, the averaging process will reduce the variability, but trying to get the average about the same. And in that case, we probably gonna, that process will give you the average grade, but you could take it by adding some dilution and ore loss in there, but that's a new perspective for me to think about. And that's also something I learned from talking with our mining engineers colleagues.
Excellent. And I think if you were trying to think about how other resource methodologies which apply, which then try to estimate the model at different cutoff grades, what are some of those other more advanced resource estimation methodologies?
Yeah, so those resources at non-zero cutoffs, we usually call that recoverable resources. And because at the early stage of the project, we only have very sparse training data, and we can't really directly estimate into the small blocks or SMUs, selective mining unit. So we need to use some magics or the nonlinear estimation methods to bypass this dilemma. So the common ones we use localized uniform conditioning or localized multiple indicator kriging. So those methods can help us to estimate using the sparse trailing data, estimate into the large blocks or panels, and then localize those values into the small SMUs. Although there are a few issues with those methods itself, it can't really predict the accurate locations of the SMUs inside one panel. But at least it will give us an idea about how well the recoverable resources look like on the global scale and also in a local scale.
Great. And I think for me, when using these particular models, some of the things that come to mind for recoverable resource estimates, whether it be with uniform conditioning or multiple indicator kriging, one is that that we're trying to be able to estimate the tons that we'll get out at a particular cutoff. Yes. And quite often, when you compare it to an equivalent model using ordinary kriging, at a cutoff grade above zero, the tons will be lower and the grade will be higher because we're trying to estimate the amount that we can get at that particular cutoff grade, with less sort of averaging involved there. And so that's something that we need to be aware of.
Yep.
The second one is that we put these grades into local blocks that we're not confident about them. We're from a geologist's perspective, they're trying to replicate the distribution of grades. Exactly. But the confidence about where those individual blocks sit is not high. And so it's important for the mining engineer to understand that that's not actually a high confidence local estimate, and that you might need to mine a little bit more to be confident that you're going to get the resource out at that grade distribution, right?
Exactly. So I think that's part of our geologists' fault is we didn't. Most of the time, we didn't spend the effort to declare what are the risks or what are the uncertainties with the model we deliver to our mining engineers. So, for example, for the recoverable resources, whether you use LUC, MIK, or conditional simulation, when you localize the grade from the panel to the SMUs, you are assuming you're going to mine the whole panel, and then you would get so much metal and so much tonnage and grade at certain cutoffs. So that's a very important assumption. So we're not saying for this specific panel, if you just mine the couple localized SMUs, you're going to get the exact grades. Those are not the things we're trying to tell you. So in other words, there's no free lunch. If we want to get that details at the local scale, you have to do the drilling. So for those nonlinear techniques, it's just a convenient way for us to give you a prediction when we don't have that level of the data.
Yeah, I think that's you raised a really critical point, is that the geologists are making an assumption that the mining engineer will take the entire panel.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't think the mining engineer necessarily gets that.
Yeah.
Right? The message doesn't necessarily get through in order for you to have confidence about it. And it does lead to that risk of you might leave gold sitting in your high wall of your pit or in the outside of your stope as a result of trying to be really targeted on these small blocks. Right?
Exactly.
So, Greg, I think, like in talking through all of that, there's a couple of concepts that we brought up that maybe I think it'd be useful if you could help explain to us mining engineers what they mean. So, one is around a change of support. When we talk about a change of support, what are we looking at?
Yeah, be a pleasure. So, when we talk about the change of support, we are really talking about the volume, whether it's sample, it's a point, or whether it's a SMU, it's a small volume, or we're talking about the panel, which is larger volume. And so when we talk about the sample support, we also want to honor the relationship between the volume variance relationship. And that relationship, for that relationship, it usually means for the smaller sample support, for the smaller support, we expect larger variability, and when we come as support increases, we would expect less variability. So the change of support techniques, whether it's global or local, we're trying to get that relationship right. And for the global change of support techniques, we have a fine log normal, indirect log normal, and discrete Gaussian method. And for the local change of support, we have LUC, MIK, and conditional simulation. And each of that might have some fine details or different sub-methods, but overall, that's what we're trying to get.
And so, the way I understand that concept is often people say you don't mine the drill hole, right?
Exactly.
So you can't mine to the level of selectivity of an individual drill hole, even if you had confidence in what that interval actually said,
Exactly.
right? So when we bulk it up into the mining process, we mine much more than a sample in one go with a bucket, with a truck, with an excavator. So that's going to average those grades out, going to change the grade distribution. And bring it closer to the mean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And as you said, the scale is the most important thing. From us, we always want to focus on the practicality. We probably weren't really interested in the variability at the point scale. We won't mine at the point level. We only want to mine at the selective mining unit level. So that's the most important scale or the sample support we're interested. And we do all those magic tricks to predict the expected tonnage and grade curve at that level at certain cutoffs.
Perfect. And the other topic that we brought up was localization. So can you we'll just go back to what localization actually means?
Yes. So when we talk about localizations, first of all, we use a sample grade to estimate into the large panels because the estimation is only going to be good enough for those sparse drilling data. And if we're going to use the sparse drilling data directly estimate into the SMUs, we're always gonna overestimate the metal at non-zero cutoffs. And that's the fundamental reason why we need to go estimate into the panels and then localize into SMUs. So what is localization? That means when we get the grade at the panel level, we get the CDF hopefully at the panel level, and then we want to sample the values from this CDF into the SMU level, and then hopefully we want to maintain the average grade and the total metal on the panel basis. So we can honor that at least the average grade. So that's essentially the localization techniques. Whether it's LUC or MIK, it's essentially getting the same outcome. It's just there's details a little bit different in the details of how we get it done.
Yeah. So I guess my naive understanding of that is that we estimate into the panel, right? We estimate the CDF or the cumulative distribution function. So the grade distribution curve within that big panel. And then within that, we break that panel into smaller blocks. And we're trying to replicate the grade distribution within those smaller blocks by placing them in the right place within those larger panels in order for mine planners to have a single grade in a single block rather than a percentage of a block.
Exactly. And in that localization process, one important step is called ranking estimate. So we're using the grade all over the place and then do an unconstrained estimate. So we won't use the grade of this estimation, but we're going to use relative locations of those estimation. So by doing that, we can honor the anisotropy of the samples all over the place. Hopefully that will give us a guidance of where those SMUs could potentially be located. That's our best guesstimate, but it won't be accurate.
Yeah, so I think the key point with localization is that the mining engineer shouldn't expect that is how the resource is going to present itself. We can't have our cake and eat it too, right? You can't have sparse data and have confidence about where that block is locally. That you really should consider, say, in an open pit, taking more material in order to give you confidence that you can extract it, unless you do the drilling to define it.
Exactly.
And for an underground mine plan, you've got to be very careful with using these localized models for planning your stopes, because you're often operating at a higher end of the grade distribution curve.
Yes. And
these models can be might be spotty. The higher grades might be located in different places within the panel and might give slightly misleading estimates of where material is within the block.
That's exactly right. And just one last point is our mining engineers colleagues look at the localized model. So just on the panel basis, if you see a lot of differences or the variability inside one panel, there's a lot of high grades, a lot of low grades mixed up together, then right away there's a risk inside this panel. However, when you see one panel full of SMUs with more or less similar grades, then this panel has lower risk compared to the other one. So I think that's a very important information to keep in mind.
Excellent. So I think that's we've covered a few topics, interesting topics there. Hopefully for mining engineers to understand a little bit more about the resource estimation process and the information they get. And I think the thing that it comes down to is always a discussion between the person doing the mine planning and the resource estimation, so that both people have an understanding of the requirements that you've got. So thank you very much, Greg, for joining us in this discussion and enlightening us on these resource estimation methodologies.
Thank you, Tarrant.
And their implications. And if you are a mining engineer and you want to understand more about the resource estimation process, we do have a number of courses, geology for non-geologists and a resource estimation course that may be worth considering to improve your knowledge. So please check out our website for more information on those things. And if you'd like to listen to more of our Fresh Thinking by Snowden Optiro podcasts, you'll find them for free on our website, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or most other podcast platforms. And if you enjoyed the podcast, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can keep you up to date with the next ones.